Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London, and you can find me on Instagram as Skeindeer, and I am Skeindeer Knits as a designer on Ravelry. And Skeindeer Knits is also the name of my Ravelry group, Skeindeer Knits, which is the place to get in touch and take part in my knit-alongs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, welcome. If you're a new viewer here, this is my knitting talk show, knitting podcast, knitting talk every once a week of the week, and I talk about knitting. I talk about what I'm knitting, what I've purchased knitting related wise, what I am designing, because I make knitting patterns, and it's just kind of a place where you can get inspired and sit and watch and listen when you knit. And yeah, to returning viewers, I am sure you're wondering, why is Ellie looking like a porcelain doll? Why indeed? I've got nothing. I've been, we've all been we've all been locked inside like for a while. We've had time to think and just do stuff to fill time to to find ourselves. Basically, I got a lot of stuff to use to curl my hair because I have literally never ever in my life been able to tame this whole thing. I'm not saying that's something I have now achieved, but this is the closest I've ever got, and I'm not hating it. I quite like it. I mean, I look ridiculous, but I also like it. Oh dear, yeah, seriously, like hair and me just never have been a thing. It's straight, like these curls are probably going to be straight by the end of the day. I mean, I've tried all I can with like foaming stuff and hairspray, and I slept with these like pillow rollers overnight, and that's really done the trick. All these like heat stuff things, they never really worked. I don't know if I'm going to spend too much time talking about that because this is a knitting podcast and definitely not a hair podcast because I do not have the credentials to do that. But I thought some people are probably going to wonder what is going on here. Yeah. I'm not saying this is not the look because it takes significantly more effort than doing absolutely nothing, which is my usual. I mean, I barely have to brush my own hair. That's like how straight it is. But I quite like it. Kind of goes with my usual lipstick, and I can't wait to like combine this with like colorwork cardigans and stuff, but obviously it's a bit too hot right now to wear that. You can see the sun's coming in and going. It's spring. It's the 2nd of May. It's yeah, it's where did April go? So yeah, anyway, knitting. I only have a very quick admin announcement, which is that I'm running the year-long Skeindeer Knits garment KAL. I don't remember if that's the official name, but it kind of does the job of describing what it's about, which is basically knitting any of my garment patterns in order to take part in a KAL. The deadline's at the very end of the year. You only have to have started the project this year, and you can make as many as you want. I mean, you get an entry per item. I have chunky knits, I have light fingering weight knits. You know, pick whatever suits you. And obviously more garment patterns will come out during the year as well. So yeah, I am really enjoying seeing all the garments that come up on Instagram. Again, yesterday was one of those days where they just kept coming up. I saw this gorgeous Ultra, and there were a lot of others, but yeah, they make me really happy. So when you guys tag me, I'm like, oh. So yeah, anyway. That's the admin that I have. If you're wondering about these knit-along things, the best way to take part is in the Ravelry group, but you can also make use of the hashtag on Instagram. So anyway, what have I been knitting on? You guys, I have been the most monogamous knitter this week. I am not a monogamous knitter. For anyone who's been around for a while, you'll know that. I am chaotic. I am the most chaotic knitter. There's no system. I like systems, but just never really achieve them, and this is definitely true for my knitting as well. But I was monogamously knitting on this one item the whole week. It is not finished, so we will be getting to that item in a bit. I was only knitting on that for a whole week, but after that, after I kind of went I kind of made it to the 50% mark, I guess. I decided, you know what, I'm gonna finish something now. This thing's not gonna be finished yet, but I can finish the Calibrate sweater. This is a sweater pattern designed by my friend Alex of Spindles and Stitches. She usually sells like wool, like roving and stuff to spin, and she's a dyer of such woolly units. You can tell I'm not a spinner. That's not my... But she has also dabbled into garment designs, and what a start she had. She basically invented this thing that is an understatement to call a pattern, because what you really do with Calibrate is that you put in all your measurements and it spits out numbers that are your stitch count or row count or what have you. Yeah, it's quite incredible. So it's a top-down raglan, but it will be exactly tailored to your measurements from, you know, upper bust, I think below bust, upper arm circumference, mid arm circumference, wrist, the whole, you know, hip, obviously. Yeah, so you fit it exactly to your measurements and your proportions, and it's a fairly basic top-down raglan at the end of the day. So what you actually can do with it is largely up to you. If you wanted a raglan that you kind of have as your foundation point and have it fit your measurements, but without you doing the calculations, Calibrate. So that's what I did, and I want to show you just like one kind of alteration that you can do. So this is what it looks like. The colours are shocking, I know. Who would have thought that I would have gone near such a colour? This is actually my first ever burgundy love. I saw this yarn worked up in a pattern and I saw the photo. I was like, oh, I like burgundy. Revelation. All my life I thought my favourite colour was red, and I mean it is. But yeah, so I of course had to take the opportunity to choose this yarn for this pattern. Spoiler, I don't love the yarn. I have used this yarn for socks in the past, and it's been really good for that, and it blocks out to be really nice and flowy and even. But it's so squeaky. It's a 80% superwash wool and 20% nylon. So I don't usually have problems with nylon counts that high, but I think in combination with the very heavy superwash treatment, this feels very plasticky for a wool yarn. I'm not saying I'll never use it again. I'm probably alluding to maybe not using it again for a garment, but it will be a long-lasting garment, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted this raglan that is tailored to my measurements to be something I can just chuck in the wash. And so once I cast it on, I actually went right ahead to demonstrate that, and I put it in the wash on the regular cycle. I know, she's a mad woman, but it came up super nice. And yeah, so this is the whole of Calibrate, and you can see my modification, and you can see my bright red skirt. I have indeed made it into a kind of long cropped sweater, and I am really pleased with it, and I haven't actually tried it on since it was on the needles. I just put it right in the washer because I'm wild like that. Now I want to say as well that the Calibrate is made to be a zero ease garment. Now zero ease just means that you put in your measurements and those are the stitch counts that you get out. So it will not have, it won't be any tighter than your measurements. I'm just like saying that holding my, I don't know. But it also won't be any looser than your measurements. So just to kind of recap on ease. Ease just means the difference between the garment measurements and your measurements. So if it's got positive ease, that means you are adding the positive ease to your measurements. So if I measure say 100 centimeters bust circumference and the pattern says 5 centimeters positive ease, well I need to knit 105 centimeters. I need to find the size that is closer to 105 centimeters. Equally, if it says 5 centimeters negative ease, I need to find the size that is closer to 95 centimeters, so 5 centimeters less than 100 centimeters. This, however, is a zero ease design, so if you measure 100 centimeters, you will get that here. So if you want to add ease, you need to add that to your measurements that you plug into the pattern. I did that to the sleeves because I kind of like them just a little bit positive ease, just a little bit, and they fit really well. So there's Calibrate. It's got full-length sleeves. It has a fairly nice sort of scoop neckline. So yeah, sometimes there's a lot of raglan sweaters out there that don't really shape the neckline. It just kind of is a square built around a hole, and that just sits in the middle. And you kind of face the same challenges that you face with yokes, in that if you don't put in any shaping, it just kind of suffocates a bit up here and starts hanging a bit low in the neck. So this is very well suited to those who want it to sit nicely, and I really like these kind of back front ratios. I think that's flattering. I think it's comfortable to wear, and yeah. So I don't really know what else to say. You'll obviously notice that the finishing of it is quite different. The original designs have these kind of front and back flaps. That's probably not the most flattering thing I could have called them. They are essentially a split hem that is quite long. But as is usually the case with me when I wear skirts, and I think that's the kind of general rule, is that you will normally wear shorter sweaters. Like, they don't have to be crop tops by no means, but I do find that sweaters with a length that is intended to be worn with, say, jeans isn't something that looks flattering on me when I wear skirts. I often find that my sweaters need to be either shorter, or I basically need to roll them up or tuck them into my skirt. So I just made my life easier by making it shorter and did a fairly long rib. I think the rib is like 8 centimeters, 3 inches, something like that. And yeah, it's a really nice length. It is obviously longer than a kind of classic crop, and that's generally what I prefer, to be honest. Something that just stops at the very top of my hips and just after the small of my waist, somewhere around there. I'm not exactly sure where they go, so I just try them on and it usually works. I generally have like some kind of convenient numbers in my head that 25 centimeters is kind of the shortest I will make, and 30 tends to be quite comfortable. So I went with somewhere in between that. It's a very precise science. It does also have bust darts. As you can see, they do kind of appear as these like diagonals. And what they do is they kind of maintain the height differences of the front and back. So whatever kind of my breasts push out in the garment, it doesn't actually make the sweater pull up. This is very convenient if you have a cropped sweater, if you have a shorter length. The effect is less visible when something is longer, also if your bust is smaller, like mine. But bustier women I find often say very good things about bust darts, and I think it's, if you are a bustier person, then for sure go look up, you know, have a, I don't know, I've heard there's lots of blogs that write about bust darts, and I think it would be worth looking that up and see if your, you know, garments will fit you better if you incorporate that as a modification where that is possible. This is not based on my experience, but the experience of my bustier friends, and I'm just passing it along. So hopefully that's something that might be helpful. Yeah, that's Calibrate. I am just really happy with it. I also like the weight. Again, I don't like when sweaters are like super mega heavy. This one is sort of in between. I love the colour. I really hope this one gets a, you know, a comfortable place in my wardrobe. I don't imagine I'll be wearing it now that it's getting warmer, of course, but I hope it will be something I'll be wearing a lot more often than a lot of the sweaters that I'm quite precious with. So yeah, Calibrate, finished object by Alex, Spindles and Stitches. And yeah, she's got a lot of testers, by the way, when she did the patterns. There's so many projects on Ravelry from all different bodies that you can look at, so I would recommend that. But anyway, so moving on to works in progress. I'll be talking about 2 works in progress. Now, yes, I was unusually monogamous in my knitting this week, so that's the one I want to talk about first, but the second one is actually because I forgot to mention it last time, so okay. Anyway, so you'll remember I cast on a project last week that I felt would take a long while. It would be with a lot smaller needles than I work with nowadays. Kind of going back to my beginner knitting days where I would knit with needle sizes like that actually quite often. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to start it. It's not going to be done anytime soon. This will take a while. And I told everyone, I'm like, what am I thinking? But I want it, so I'll do it. And you know what? I've done all this Has it been fast? Well, no, I've just been knitting on it quite persistently. It's just something I've kept in my lap while doing anything. You know, even if I'm working on my thesis, even if I'm just about to wake up, even if it's late, even if I'm on a webcam, something with people. This thing, just really easy to work on. It is so simple. So let me start from the beginning. This is the Jan sweater, which is one of the vintage patterns from Susan Crawford's second Stitching Time book. It is this book right here. I have all 3 of her big books, and we're obviously hoping for more. And this is the Jan sweater. I am obviously not making it yellow, I'm making it in my go-to burgundy. I am first and foremost loving this yarn. Obviously the colour is no surprise. I think this is the absolutely perfect shade of burgundy. Like, I know this happens, like if you watch a lot of podcasts, you'll find that they have a go-to colour that they like, their favourite to knit with, and we start to develop this very broad definition of what that colour is. And I start to define burgundy from anything from purple to red. But if you want to know what's like the shade, it's this babe right here. It's just, it comes actually up as a little bit more maroon on camera. It doesn't really have much brown to it in real life. It's cooler, basically. The yarn is Knitting for Olive Merino, which is their light fingering weight merino. That is non-superwash. I know now because I have spit spliced. And it's spit spliced really easily. I've done it twice. I've joined in the 3rd skein now. There are 50-gram balls like these. I've bailed knit from this one, and they go a long way. I think they got about 250 meters per ball, and this thing's gonna be so nice and light and wearable and. I feel like this came up last time. It did, didn't it? That I had cast on too many stitches, and I'd worked an entire rib that took me half a week, and found that I should have increased 50 stitches after the rib, and I cast on that total stitch count to begin with, and I just went with it. I just decided, you know what, the rib's already going to pull in, and the stockinette with eyelets gonna kind of funnel out, bubble out, I don't know. And that is definitely what's happening. It's a lot more subtle than the pattern photo, but I like subtle. That's a big fat lie, but I do in this one. So it's looking like this right now. I am just loving it. I really love knitting on it, and my little modification to work it in the round has made all the difference. Obviously that's not going to be the case for you if you like working flat back and forth, but I don't. So in combination with not enjoying purling and not enjoying mattress stitching, I just did this in the round, and the only difference I need to do is to knit the purl rounds, which is literally just knit instead of purl. There's no eyelet or decreasing or anything happening on those rounds, so it's been a very easy modification to do. I'm not fussed about this whole structure thing for these things that's supposed to be seamed. I'm like, it's knit fabric, it's gonna be a bit so and so anyway, so I'm like, yeah, I talked about that last time. We don't need to hash over that again. We don't need to rehash that again. So yeah, I am basically, I think maybe up to the underarm. I'm not entirely sure, because the pattern actually has a lot of different lengths. If you look into the vintage pattern, which is included in the book, every pattern in the book will include a photocopy of the vintage pattern. And there it says to knit to 7 inches, which is very, very short. Let me translate that to 2 centimeters. That's 18 centimeters. What? Anything less than 25. Remember what I said? Anything less than 25 I will not do. So I don't know if this was designed for very short people, because like this is the body length. It will like literally go to just below my breasts. So it's very, very nice that Susan changed this. She has changed it by a lot. So it's gone from 18 to a minimum of 30, which I think is a very nice length. And I think that's what I will go for. However, 30 is only for the smallest size, and my size has like almost 10 centimeters more. Now, this is too long. This is not cropped anymore. This is a huge difference from this. Right. What am I doing? This. It's a lot longer. So I think I'm gonna go and find the happy middle ground there and go for 30. Usually 25 is my cropped length. But I kind of like the kind of idea that it's supposed to kind of roll over the rib a bit. So if this gets too long, but I still kind of place the rib at my waist, it will sort of hang a bit over like a belly roll. Kind of like that. So I'm having a think about it, basically. Yeah. So that's kind of why after 1 week of intense knitting, intense monogamous knitting, I decided to just pick up Calibrite and finish that. And now I'm actually doing the same thing with the fuzzy pickle. It's really close to being done, and I have just been procrastinating. Could have been done a month ago, but well, you know. Now I'm putting the Jan sweater away for just right now. I'm going to talk about my other work in progress. There is nothing for acquisition, so what I'm going to finish off this rather shorter episode with is actually talking a bit about vintage patterns. And now that I have the hair to do that, I don't ignore me. I mean, don't ignore me, because I have another project to talk about. It's the Marius Sweater. Why did I say it that way? I don't know. You guys have heard me talk about the Marius a lot on this podcast. Since the very beginning, I was like a Marius addict. It is a pattern you will have up to here and then some if you live in Norway. They put it on everything. It's this nostalgic sweater pattern from the 1950s, early 50s, that stem back from a book that was published in the 20s. But that book was based around traditional Norwegian knits like the Skeindeer, which is older. So it has a lot of nostalgia to people. You know, the Marius pattern became a huge hit in the post-war era when Norway was kind of finding itself again and all that stuff. I even have like my little cushion there. I have a lot of sweaters, but then when I started the podcast, I kind of just stopped knitting them. I had done so much Marius. If you go to my Ravelry project and you click the Skeindeer tab, you'll see just how much I've done. It's kind of crazy, but that's how I perfected my colorwork skills. Just do the same chart over and over and over again until perfection. Yeah. So I have finally returned to it. I was going to return to it back when we had the Marius KAL like 2 years ago. But I just had to follow my muse, and at last the muse said, Marius! So that's the Marius. I am not following a particular pattern. I'm certainly not following any of the millions of Marius patterns I got in my bookshelves. I've got 2 books here dedicated to Marius patterns. But no, I am using something along the lines of Otra or Islander. Anyway, my 2 top down drop sleeve drop shoulder sweater patterns. I came up with a really cool construction method, if I may say so myself, that I make it top down. It has steeks for the armholes, and this one even has a steek for the front because I want to make it into a cardigan, and those are sweater patterns. So, and I just superimposed the Marius chart onto that pattern basically. I mean, there are 2 different patterns. I just don't remember which one I chose, and I didn't follow the neckline, so it's, yeah, it is what it is. You can tell this is the chart I like try to perfect, right? It's ridiculously even. It's not blocked. I've done this a lot. When I am old and have forgotten most things, I will still remember this chart. So there we have it. What I have done since last time is I put in the crochet thingy things in the armholes so I could cut those open whenever I feel like it and start working the sleeves when I get bored with the stocking of the body, because that is taking its sweet time. It's this long after working on it through a number of Marvel Cinematic Universe films. So I'm at here now. It could be a nice cropped cardigan, but I would like for it to reach my hips and not just my bra wire. So I'm gonna persevere on that one. I have debated what to do with the neckline, because I could just keep it as this kind of narrow boat neck, but something tells me I'll be like, ugh. So that was dramatic. What I think I'll do is cut out the neckline, right? And then I'll just pick up and do, you know, the rib around as you normally do. So I don't know how deep I want it to sit, because there's obviously going to be a very warm jacket almost, not like the Marius Sweater that I hope to wear in, so in between temperatures. So I think I will have the neckline sit higher. I might just cut it down to here. I don't really want to interrupt this situation, so yeah, we'll see what I do there. I will put off that decision for now. But yeah, I might start a sleeve soon if I get tired of the stockinette or whatever. But yeah, the yarn. You may want to know what yarn I'm working with. This is Hillesvåg Ask. It is one of my favourite yarns. It's one of those kind of classic Norwegian yarns that sits somewhere in between sport weight and fingering weight. Comes in a plethora of gorgeous colours. A little bit tricky to get depending on where in Norway you live. I kind of struggle to get hold of it in Trondheim, to be honest, but in Bergen and Oslo I know it's fairly easy to get at Husfliden. So, and I've got my beautiful shade cards here, and I love looking at this yarn. I love knitting with it. These colours are absolutely perfect for Marius. It is usually Sandnes who will kind of provide yarn for that, but I went with Hillesvåg. It's what I had in stash. So that's that basically. I think I'm going to work a bit on that today. I'm going to put it next to my computer so I'll remember. So that's, oh my god, I just realised my bowl of fruits look like it's themed after this whole podcast, with the Marius Sweater, with his navy top, with my beautiful red skirts. Oh my god, is it May 17th yet? It is not. And it's going to be cancelled anyway. I don't know if you know what May 17th is. Maybe we can talk about that since it's May and I seem to have the colour scheme completely nailed down, even though it's not. I didn't do it on purpose, that's what I'm trying to say. May 17th is Norway's Independence Day, basically. It's when we got the constitution. It's when but it is super different from any other equivalent day in other countries, as confirmed by people who have been to Norway when it's being celebrated, and found that it is quite different because it's very much a children's day with lots of ice cream and a lot of outdoors games and yeah, parades with children, and it's a really nice and cheerful day. And I am super sad it won't happen this year. Now I'm sure some of you guys are thinking, oh, you're in London, of course it's not going to happen for you. They do actually do it in Southwark Park in London. They do that there and it's really nice, and it's kind of like a little Norwegian bubble in the middle of London, and it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to get my waffles, my hot dogs, my kronis, no brødkake, nothing. So I guess we're all in that together, Norway, yay. So yeah, that was not what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about vintage patterns. So where am I at with those? Why haven't I done more vintage patterns? Surely I seem to have a knack, a flair, a taste for the porcelain doll aesthetic. Yeah, and I love vintage patterns, and there's a reason why I have all these Susan Crawford books, aside from just Susan being a very nice person. But yeah, I do. However, have you seen the gauges and the sizes? Because I swear there are not needle sizes small enough to knit some of those. I guess there are, I knit very tight, and even I'm like, how am I ever gonna get a 40 stitch gauge? That's, and I don't want to do that. And then I'm like, oh well, the sizes offered in vintage patterns are usually very small, and if that is you, if you are like kind of in the lower 30s for an inch bust, if you're like 30 to 32, somewhere around that, I have good news for you. Those patterns will fit you. and you don't have to do anything to make them fit. But for the rest of us, what do? Obviously, one thing you could do is just use 2 synchrophotos patterns, because what she does is expand the sizes a lot. Not all the way that I would expect from a indie pattern, that I would want a size range going much bigger, but she goes a long way to expand to the most kind of common sizes out there. So that's one way. But if you want to like find one of those old, like, you know, newspaper clippings with a vintage pattern in it, and you go, oh, one size fits all, 32 inches. I even actually came across one pattern, what's it called? I actually had it printed out here. A cardigan for the not so slim. It's a 36-inch bust. I mean, I'm a bit mad at these old, like, just, oh. But instead of just fretting over that, which isn't productive at all, I like to think of how to make it work. So without further ado, gauge. Because if you've got one size fits all, you really have 2 choices in how to expand the sizes. The most common one you'll find is obviously change the stitch count. If you have more stitches, you can get more sizes. Or you can change the gauge. It's the same calculation, it's just that it goes the other way around. You are, instead of finding the centimeters instead of finding the centimeters that you want, or inches, and multiplying that by the gauge that the pattern says you should use to get a new stitch count, where you have to rework all sorts of things with the stitch pattern and what have you. Instead of doing that, you can take the stitch count in the pattern and divide that by whatever gauge you want, and see which outcome is closer to the measurements that you want. And that, my friends, will mean that I don't have to knit any of these in those awfully tight gauges that will take forever. Now, this isn't a new idea. I mean, I'm probably not the first person to think about this, but also I'm not the first me to think about this, because I thought about this 3 years ago when I started the Eleanor sweater, where I've only done the rib, and yes, it is the exact same color as this, almost. It's a bit more, slightly different shade of burgundy. Anyway, why are you attacking me? Yeah, so it's very simple. It's a very simple calculation. I'm not saying that because I'm some kind of math genius who can just do amazing things with maths and expect everyone to. I'm not that person. I weekly have conversations with my PhD supervisor where I'm like, but I don't understand fractions. I have to write these fractions in my thesis and I don't understand them. I try. It does not compute. So when I say it's simple, it's really simple. All you have to do is go into the pattern and find the stitch count for the full bust. Now this may be the trickiest part, because one, they are worked flat most of the time, so you will only get half the stitch count, but also they do tend to increase the stitch count post rib. Just looking at that project. Yeah, so you need to keep an eye out for that, as opposed to what I did. So find the stitch count after the rib, multiply by 2 because you want both the front and back. Whether you want to work that in the round or keep it flat is up to you, but you need the full stitch count. Divide that by, say, 2. That's a 20 stitch gauge. You'll get a number coming out there. Is that close to yours? Is it too big? Okay, let's go with 2.2. That's a 22 stitch gauge. We're fully metric here, guys, so you may have to calculate once you get your number. So you'll get the number in centimeters. Again, is this number closer to your bust measurement? Yes. Okay. So let's say the outcome was 105 centimeters. Maybe that's your bust measurement and that's what the pattern came out with. Or maybe you were 100 and came out 105. That's still close enough. kind of the best we can hope for. If you are a more of an inches kind of person, you literally just write 105 centimeters in inches in Google and you'll get it. And so I have spent the past week procrastinating making a Ravelry favorites bundle, and I called it Vintage, True Vintage I think I called it, because I ended up merging it with an older collection that was called True Vintage. And I actually printed it just so I can show you here. These are all the patterns I've added. It's a lot of old newspaper clippings, but the rest is all Susan Crawford. And so even though she has actually expanded to kind of to the upper 40s in inches, I still want to make the smallest size with a looser gauge. So I've actually gone through a lot of these. Now I don't want to give away the stitch counts of those patterns because they are hers. So let's just take one that is available on the internet for free. I mean, you can take the sweet little blouse. It has 244 stitches for the full bust in the round. But if you work it flat, divide by half, you know, by 2. 244 stitches. If I divide that by 2.2, that's a 22 stitch gauge, and that's about sport weight. You can work DK weight and fingering weight there as well, but it's generally considered a sport weight gauge. I get 111 centimeters. Now that's about maybe 5 centimeters more than my bust measurement. But that sounds quite comfortable actually. That's not going to be much when you consider that's 5 centimeters positive distributed evenly around my whole circumference. So yeah, perfect. And a 22 stitch gauge, meaning I could use Fino, Usk, I could go with my DK weight yarns if I want to work thicker yarns. You know what, I could even work Whole Super Soft and get a very nice light garment. It's the same gauge that I used for the After Party sweater, which was in Whole Super Soft. So a 22 stitch gauge is quite open for a lot of different yarn weights, which I think is really cool. The problem is, of course, you will be off in row gauge, and row gauge is a pain to modify for. And so if you're a complete garment beginner, maybe this isn't where you want to begin. But if you're quite advanced and you know how to accommodate for row gauge by, say, just adding or removing more rows, you'll probably have to remove rows, I should think. I think you'll find challenges when you get to the sleeves. I am still getting to that. I haven't tried this yet. This is all theoretical, but absolutely this is how designers work, you know, so it should work, and I'm excited to try this out once I'm done with the Jan sweater. So this may be just as nonsensical as my was a pickup rate math talk last time, but hopefully it made a little bit of sense at least. And that's kind of my thinking around this whole vintage pattern knitting, because that's a plethora of free patterns online. Obviously I say support indie designers and stuff, but if you want to try a different pattern writing style, that's a huge challenge and will make you, you know, much better knitter for it, which is a challenge I always like. You will obviously get to explore a whole nother era of knitting, which is amazing. And yeah, it's just a cool way to challenge yourself and try something new, and I want to do that. So maybe this is going to be just like the Eleanor sweater, where it's a lot of talk and no action. But that's what lockdown is doing to me anyway. I am just like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. And I guess I could just round up this episode by talking a little bit about where I'm at with lockdown now. I'm done with the knitting talk, so I'm just gonna, yeah, touch upon where I'm at with that. I definitely recognize that we are in a lot of different places when it comes to the lockdown, and again, I cannot possibly account for all the different feelings we may have about that. I think I am weirdly doing a lot better than a lot of people, which is weird because it's usually the other way around, and I think that's just because I've been actually living like this for a long time already. And so I mean, if in a really weird way, finding that I have company now, and that's as much as I'd rather we didn't have a pandemic, there's something nice with company, obviously. And I think personally there's something with having been kind of given permission to not have to do this sort of social upkeep all the time, that has allowed me to find myself. I don't want people to feel like a pandemic is like, oh, turn that into your self-realization project, because no, you do you. And that's kind of why I end up all these episodes by saying be your own best friend, because I think that's where the answer lies. It isn't, oh, now you can be productive, now you can do this and that and that. And it's like, no, look at yourself from the outside as a good friend and see, what does this person need? And that's kind of where I'm at. I've realized for a long while I need to get back into cooking, because I don't know, ever since I moved in here I just fell out of this cycle of regularly buying groceries, making sure I cook them and eat them before they expire, and just keeping that routine in motion, which should be very easy. When you're doing a PhD, nothing's easy. So I just felt completely out of that loop, and I finally found it back again. And I haven't bought takeout for over a week. I think it's been 2 weeks. Yikes. And I'm kind of just like taking weird moments to, I don't know, do my hair or clean up stuff. Like I've kind of come up with a good system for my wardrobe now. I'm just like kind of feel like I got stuff sorted, and I'm like, who am I even? So I guess what I'm trying to say with all this is, again, you know, look at yourself from the outside and see, what does this person need that I can give them? Maybe what you need is a walk. Maybe it's naps. Maybe it's full night's sleep. Maybe it's, yeah, a good cleaning routine, or alone time, or mowing the lawn. I don't know, maybe it's nothing, maybe it's all the things. I think we're so different, and I guess I just kind of want to discourage this idea that we are all gonna get through this in the same way. I don't think it's true or useful. I think you do you is such a good phrase that has unfortunately been tainted to be used kind of passive aggressively, but I generally mean it. You do you. I think that's the way to go. And so with that being said, I'm gonna get back to my knitting, and I've got some friends I want to talk to on webcam now, so they're probably wondering where I'm at. And yeah, I hope I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.